You better than me. You better than me. You better than me.
What's up, everybody? It is your girl, Kristin, and we are back here for another episode of the You Better Than Me podcast. Fallon, girl, how you doing?
I am doing good, girl. I am doing good. And just so the people know, we are live and in the building today. We are having our first episode with our first guest, and I am like beyond excited.
Yes, I'm excited too. I know a lot of times people are just like, put me on the show, put me on the show. But I always say, hey, right now it's just between Fallon and myself. Like, once we get to that spot, because you guys know we're new, once we get to that spot when we would like to have guests, we'll definitely start looking at guests to have. And so we finally got to that spot where we wanted to have guests and wanted to make sure that we had a topic that we were knowledgeable about, and we had people that could speak on the topic. So I'm excited as well.
Me too. If the people have been listening, you will know that Kristen and I had a whole conversation about sex, about what we knew, what my mom and daddy and what our parents and grandparents didn't tell us about, our experiences going off to college, having to figure things out on our own. And honestly, that kind of opened up the door to an even more important conversation. We got info on how to use it, but we never really get the opportunity to talk about what we're using or like just the different issues plaguing Black women and like reproductive health. Like, it's so taboo still to even talk
Yeah.
about a period, or it's so taboo to even have to miss work because you have cramps or something like that. And myself personally, I am a fibroid survivor. I'll say that. I've had surgery to have them removed. I've had moments where I didn't even realize that what I was experiencing was abnormal. Like, I'm thinking everybody waking up looking like it's a crime scene or something. Like, I didn't
Right.
know this. Like, I literally thought that the small tampons in the store were decoration. I did not know anybody was buying them. I did not know that until I started talking about what I was going through and kind of what I was experiencing. And I know our guests, even you, every Black woman, every woman has something to share about this topic. That's why I'm like so deep
Mhm.
about it, because we get to like actually dive into it and have this conversation. But it is so many misconceptions and just so many things out there that we don't know, and I'm excited. So for those who've been listening, it's well known. I'm a lawyer. I go to court. I do all these things. I write. I balance a family. I got a dog. I'm a dog mom, about to get married, but I also have to deal with that time of the month. And like I said before, I am a fibroid survivor. So that time for me was not always pleasant. There were times where your girl was like DOA, like
Oh my
could not
Lord.
get out of bed. And Kristen, I don't know. I feel like you one of them girls that we've talked about it and you'll be like, oh, what? Oh, slim or something. Like,
What? What you
correct,
mean, Slim?
correct
What
me if I'm wrong, but like, I feel like we've had conversations and I've been like, Kristen, I'm cramping like crazy. And you'll
So
be
I
like,
don't think we had deep conversations about it because your girl do cramp, and I feel like as I've approached 40, like I feel like it's been a little bit different. But I remember being young, and I used to have to get picked up from school. I would
oh,
like
wow.
vomit at school, like it was really really bad. And then I guess I kind of just grew out of that. But um, I feel like it's so important because like as I don't know how your mom was, but for me, when mine started, my mama had to put everybody on the phone, let them she didn't started a period, and
Oh my
everybody had
God.
to know. And I think I saw something on TikTok where they kind of did this, where a girl, her family was very like I'm gonna say spiritual.
Like they did a
Spiritual.
ritual or like
It was kind of like a ritual, and I thought that was so nice. Like they laid her down, they had incense, even though I don't like the smell of incense, but they had incense burning, and they kind of like prayed over her womb or whatever. And people were like telling stories about things. But I feel like that is so interesting to me because, like, one day you're a child, and then you wake up and you have blood in your drawers. So you're like, what
literally.
is this? And like,
It
if your
can be
parents
traumatic.
haven't had that conversation with you, like to really spell out things, And then even once you figure out what it is, just as coming up, and everybody may be different, but coming up, you got to figure out how to move through that. Like, there were times when I got cussed out. You don't leave this in a trash can like this. And,
Oh,
maybe
wow.
just being young and just not
Yeah.
knowing. So, I feel like this is such a good topic. I know that a lot of our listeners are around our age, maybe a little bit younger, but for some of the younger or kids that are about to experience this, we may have a few clips that they may need to listen to, or maybe we can, help shape the parents on how they should be speaking to their preteens and
Yeah.
teenagers about this. So,
Or
I'm
even
excited.
just how to talk with your friends, because I'm just like, that right there, had I known what I had been experiencing wasn't normal, I would have thought about it quicker. But anyways,
But you know what? Even have a talk with your son too, because
yeah,
when you think about it, like I know once we bring our guests on, people have had a lot of like instances where we done had some little issues. And I saw, yeah, I know I'm addicted to TikTok. That's why I talk about it so much. But this girl was speaking about her cycle one time, and she was saying that a guy actually came up to her and he took off his coat and he was like, wrap this around you. And he whispered in her ear and he let her know what was going on. And she was just like, that had never happened to her. So, even involving boys into the conversation, because again, we're speaking about, reproduction. Maybe this doesn't go on in your body, but if you have a sister, a girl, cousin, like,
yeah,
you might have to be that person because
or your daughter,
like, check me out. Let me know because I
for
don't know.
real, seriously. So I'm gonna introduce the people that we have with us, and baby, when I tell you that we got some heavy hitters, like
You do.
this the thing. People out here grinding. Like we out here taking over the world, like got our capes on. We like doing it so big, and people are not realizing that a lot of us are suffering in silence. So the
Mm-hmm.
people that we have joining us today, they either have a career advocating for women, helping women, actually performing medical procedures to further women's health, or they are a woman who is just like a bad B emeritus who is like doing all these things, juggling a busy career, but has had something go wrong with their reproductive system, or had a heavy period, or had a moment where they had to get derailed basically because of something that was going on that they may or may not have known about. And we want to kind of talk about that in their journeys also. So joining us in the building, I
Drum
will
roll,
start
please.
right. Right, for the trumpets, we have Miss Andonnia Maiben. She is a creative and visual artist and owner of Ann Lettered. She has recently started speaking about reproductive health issues and issues plaguing Black women. She is also a scribe, a motivational speaker, and a mentor, and a dope ass poet whom I was very blessed to meet. She is in the Houston area with me, so shout out to H Town. She will be joining us. So welcome to the platform, ma'am. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
Welcome.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Also in the building, we have my friend who I adopted when I went to DC and basically was like, oh, okay, I love her. She gonna be my friend too. Miss Chinaka Young. She is the owner of the Young Creatives Group and Story Candles and Goods, which smell good. She out here balancing multiple enterprises. She out here doing her thing. Baby girl can dress. I be all up in her stories on Instagram. Like she is a mother. She is just like doing it. So I'm happy to have Chinaka with us. I feel like I know her, even though we've only physically met each other like on one trip, and that was a
Right.
year ago. But I see what she's doing, and I admire her grind and hustle so much that I'm happy that she has blessed us with her presence also. So what's good, girl? Hey.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
Welcome.
Yes. And last but not least, we have our medical expert, Dr. Richard Jones, who is an attending physician, OBGYN board certified gynecologist with a career spanning over 16 years. And Richard is an amazing doctor. Richard is my go to for any questions I may have. Richard is an amazing person, friend, just advocate. He has spent a lot of his career serving underserved communities and women of color. He has built a platform to kind of advocate for teen pregnancy and and just spreading awareness in LGBTQ communities about reproductive health. And I'm just like super excited to have Richard because I know he is doing the work. And when I tell you doing the work, he is doing the work. So welcome so much, Dr. Jones, to the platform.
Yes, welcome,
Hey.
Dr. Jones.
Hello.
Hey.
Yes, so I'm delighted, and Kristen, you know I'm geeked up, so feel free to stop me from rambling. But I just want to kick the conversation off because these are awesome, phenomenal people, and we either have in common that we all have a womb, or we have to care for them on the daily basis. So that's one thing or two things that we all have in common. And
Right.
I'll start with you, Andonnia. If you want to go ahead and kind of like tell your story. Let us know how you balance doing all these great things and kind of how women's health and Black women's health in particular came to the forefront of one of your talking pieces, and just give the people a inside look into what you have going on right now.
Okay. So 2 years ago, I had to switch primary care physicians. Unfortunately, I was a product of someone who was going to a doctor who wasn't listening to her. When I first started going to that doctor, she had a small practice. It was 10, 15 years ago. And the larger her practice got, the less time she spent with her patients. The more things that I asked about or little questions that came up got brushed off. And finally, I said, enough is enough. And I went to my chiropractor and I said, do you know any good doctors, good PCPs? So she turned me on to this new doctor, and I went in because it was the height of COVID, and I had symptoms that a couple of my friends who have autoimmune diseases also shared. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? So
What kind of symptoms can you kind of
sure.
Yeah, like what kind of symptoms?
See if I remember them all. Muscle soreness. My legs are almost always sore. Fatigue, which is horrible. Joint issues. Hormonal weight gain. I literally could not lose weight. 3 years ago, I lost 31 pounds. I was doing keto, but I have high cholesterol, so I couldn't keep doing that. And it didn't matter if I ate, if I didn't eat, if I walked, if I didn't walk, I wasn't losing weight. So it was, and headaches too, frequent headaches. So I go to this doctor. I was like, well, I need to make sure everything is okay. And the first thing that comes up is low thyroid. So she tells me I have a touch of hypothyroidism. And when I talked about my history, she also did a pelvic ultrasound. Well, pelvic ultrasound came back. For the first time, I was diagnosed with fibroids. At the time, I had two small fibroids. I think I was at 1 or 2 centimeters for both of them. 7 months later, when I went back for a checkup, I had 3 fibroids, and I was at 3, 2, and 1 centimeter. 6 months after that, which brings us to July of 2022, I'm looking at 5 centimeters, 3 and 2. And so I opted for I went on a search for a different OB-GYN. The first one said wait, and she was also far. So I started researching about fibroids because I also later got diagnosed with PCOS. And to be honest, I'm still a little leery about that because nobody's run a full hormone panel. It's just based on symptomology, and the symptomology for PCOS and fibroids could be very similar.
Yeah.
But I started following a particular organization on Instagram because for a long time, nobody was talking about it. Nobody mentioned it to me. I knew one friend who talked about it 20 years ago, but nobody was currently in my community talking about female reproductive health issues outside of maternal mortality and the issues that we're having on that arena, but nobody was talking about this. Every now and again, you find out somebody miscarried, but it was real hush hush because there's a lot of guilt and shame surrounding miscarriage. But nobody was talking about fibroids, and I felt very alone. So once I found this organization, they pump out litigation, they pump out information, they re-tag other doctors, and so that's kind of how I started doing some research on physicians. And I actually reached out to my friend who had it 20 years ago, and I reached out to that organization, and that's how I found my current OB-GYN. And so in August, I started posting videos because I was like, we really need to be talking, because it wasn't until my diagnosis that I found out that there were multiple women in my family with reproductive health issues.
Yeah.
My grandmother had a myomectomy. My mother has a partial hysterectomy. My mother's baby sister has a partial hysterectomy. My mother's oldest sister had fibroids removed, and I have an aunt on my dad's side who also had fibroids. I'm the oldest grandchild of 7 girls. Nobody has discussed it prior to this.
But
So
that's so common. That's very common. Like
it's common, but
black
it's a
mamas
problem.
and black mamas and grandmamas. That's like a damn near a rite of passage when you hear, oh well, you know the change, and then they go into the doctor for a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
They just say
Nobody
that
talks
term
about
too. They say the change, but they never give like any other insight. It's like, well, just wait for the change, and then
or
they don't talk about it in depth.
it's never.
My other issue, I have horrible night sweats. Like wake up in the middle of the night drenched. So new doctor, I go in, I bring my report, and let's not talk about how some physicians' staff is not competent. Because I called for my results. It took 3 days. They sent me the results from 2020, not the results from 2022. It was a problem. Once I finally got them, I got to another doctor. She said, what do I want? I said, I want them gone, because I had done some research. I knew about UFEs, but at the time, I was thinking I got about a year's time frame before I started attempting this. So I knew I wanted them gone. I had looked at myomectomies before. We thought that I was going to be able to have a laparoscopic myomectomy, but because of the location of my 5 centimeter fibroid, I could not do that. So 3 weeks ago, I had an open myomectomy.
Oof. And I feel like I saw something you posted on Instagram, and I was like, oh wait, this is something I had to do. And I sent you a message like immediately, because I was like, anytime people tell me certain stuff, like if somebody telling me something about like heavy periods or like cramps that they can't deal with, or just being cold all the time, I'm thinking anemia. That's like my first thought. I'm like, all these little things are coming to my mind. So I know I sent you a message. And the Instagram community is kind of bringing more awareness, because people are sharing stories and like seeing stuff, and it's kind of making people feel more comfortable to talk about it. But otherwise, I hadn't seen anything either. I just know about, the black woman rite of passage, going to get your hysterectomy and doing all this. If you ain't had your baby by 40, blah, 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 whatever. And that's kind of all the information that we have. Just kind of resting or floating around in the community. And Chinaka, feel free to join us in and kind of fill us up with your story, and then we'll circle back with our doctor, because I really want to hear how Dr. Jones feels after he hears all of these stories, knowing the power and position that he's in.
Okay, so hey guys. So yeah, I feel like I've been in this blood thing since back in the day. I got my period when I was 10, and literally since then it's been extremely heavy. So like going back to what you felt like was normal, like it was normal my cramps weren't so bad up until about my 30s. Well, they were tolerable, but in terms of like always having a heavy flow, always leaking, always bleeding through something that was like par for the course. It wasn't until around like my early to mid 30s, I'm now 39. It wasn't until literally around maybe 34, 35 that I started realizing like, wow, so I'll go back even a little further. So I was on the NuvaRing, and because I had PCOS from back in the day, like 2008-ish, 9-ish, maybe even earlier, I got diagnosed with PCOS. And so to kind of prevent those symptoms, I was put on the NuvaRing. And so for a while, it was great. Like it regulated my period. I knew when it was coming. I could kind of deal with it. But then after a few years, I went back to my OBGYN. At this time, it was a black lady, had been going to her. And I liked her for what it was, because it's just like, okay, whatever. And I told her, I was like, I'm starting not, like, this is not really helping the symptoms anymore. And she was like, oh, the dose isn't high enough to really control those symptoms anymore. So I stopped doing the NuvaRing. And then fast forward, all of a sudden, I think the next ultrasound I got ended up saying I had fibroids. So at the time, she was kind of pushing surgery. And at the time, I was like, no, because I remember just hearing, because that's when, having PCOS, I was kind of familiar with it, but also knew that the community didn't talk about it. But I was like, she's kind of pushing the surgery without kind of alternatives. Because at the time, the other alternatives was kind of doing like the Mirena and like other forms of birth control. But I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So, but after like, so I was just dealing with it again, like this pain, like being in chronic pain all month and bleeding so much was normal. And I just, got so used to it till I literally was like, Chinaka, you can't. That's when, I heard more people talking about it, but then also realizing like, there's no way like being in pain constantly is, normal.
Mm-mm.
And so that's when I
Right.
was like, let me switch my, OBGYN. So I ended up switching my OBGYN, and she didn't push surgery at all. But after like going to her for like a year, she's like, girl, we done talked about all the options. What are you going to do? Like, you going to keep being in pain, or you going to pick something? So then finally, like, I guess doing the most recent ultrasound, fast forward, was at the top of COVID. So that's, I believe it was like January, February of 2022. At that time, it showed I had likely endometriosis, but that's something, of course, you cannot diagnose until they cut into you, type of thing, they always say. But I definitely had a lot of fibroids. Mine is like a stomach full of them, and mine are really small. I can't think of like the measurements now, but mine are kind of in clusters. So at the time, they were saying literally like I had multiple, more than like 10, like 50, like, but in small clusters. So I actually have put off my open. I wasn't, because I have so many in the condition of them, I definitely didn't qualify for laparoscopic. And then I've now rescheduled my open myomectomy 4 times, but I will be having it. I will be having it this
Struggle.
Wednesday.
Woo.
So yes, in 2 days I will be having my myomectomy. I'm sounding
Yay!
super excited, but I'm nervous.
Girl, I'm excited for you, honestly. And my life changed. Like, I was scared as shit. But to actually wake up one day and be like, oh, it's a period, and then not feel like I was going to the king. Listen.
And that's the thing. I've had a child, so I literally compare. I was like, because when people are like, oh, my cramps are bad too, I'm like, no, you don't get it. It's like, it's a different sort of thing. And to the point where I wasn't, well, I'm sure we'll touch on like the whole work situation, but yeah, definitely something it's hard to explain to people.
People don't get it. Like, and that's what I was saying, like, just not talking about it to your friends. I literally was sitting up here thinking I'm doing some normal stuff every month. Like, I would literally make references to like, it's crime scene day number 2. Or I would be like, I can't move. Like, people probably thought I was joking or just didn't realize the severity of what I was going through. It's rough.
But I'm
I
happy
had a
that you guys.
patient tell me when she wakes up, it looks like the Carrie movie.
Listen,
So-
I've used that before. And Richard, since you jumping in, I wanted to ask you a question because more than one person has mentioned it, and you mentioned it to me. So Richard is my doctor away from doctoring. If I got an issue, I will be all up in his inbox. I know he'd be like, girl. But I had to get tested for PCOS also, but I never really knew what it was. I remember I had to go get like hormone tests, and I text Richard like, hey, why is she making me do this, and what is all of that? Can you explain to us what that is? And then after you explain it, we'll pay the church's money and then get back into this topic. But I really wanted to ask you what exactly that is for the people who may not know.
Well, let me start with fibroids, first of all, for people who are listening and may not know what they are. So we know the uterus is a big muscle that is there for pregnancy. It's a nice hollow organ. If you don't get pregnant, what happens? You shed. Fibroids are tumors, are muscle tumors of the uterus, and they can vary in size. Some may be as small as lima beans. I've seen some as big as basketballs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. But basically, what does a tumor do? It will mimic the tissue around it. And so oftentimes, depending on their location, women may have heavy menstrual cycles. They may have fertility issues, pain, or cramping. And so this is just because these are benign tumors the majority of the time. There can also be cancerous lymphomas, as we call them, or fibroids. But the majority of the time, they are benign. And what are the risk factors? Well, being Black or being Hispanic It's just very, very common. Obesity is a common cause, and also family history. We see that it tends to run in families. So when your aunties or your mom or your grandparents tell you why they had to have a hysterectomy, well, back in the day, that was just a treatment back in the day.
Right.
And what I've seen, particularly since most of my patients are Black and Hispanic, kind of exogenous chemicals like the hair relaxer products. I have noticed that has been a big, big, big factor in the development of fibroids. And so we see this all the time. But there are a lot of treatment options, ranging from medication to as far as a hysterectomy and everything in between. So it really just depends on your reproductive status, what you plan on doing as far as having children, how bad your symptoms are, and the size and location of the fibroids. So often women will suffer in shame, particularly Black women, because as we know, the reproductive system of the woman is one shamed. You can't talk about your sex or your sexuality, being Black, and this has been since the beginning of time, especially the menstrual cycle, which is often a foreign thing to men. It's a shame. You don't realize that there are a lot of people out there suffering with the same problem. And then oftentimes doctors won't listen to your complaints, so people are scared to come in and tell you. We still have this issue of systemic racism that is still present today in the medical field, and oftentimes the complaints of women of color, particularly Black women, will often get dismissed or ignored. And so out of frustration, most people will just suffer with their symptoms and won't say anything. You know, there's some cultures where when you come on your cycle, you get banished out of town. You know, that's biblical. Keep it real.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
since you didn't mention the Bible, Richard, let's take a little break to pay the church's money, and then we'll come back so we can get deep into this, because now you're dropping gems, because even I didn't know all these definitions, and this, we really want to give you the opportunity to break it down for us. So let's pay the church's money.
You've probably heard of our sister company, Pyro Media Network, where some of the best rising star creators are streaming next level content. But have you ever wondered how they are produced? Have you ever wanted that same top quality content creation, photography, video production, and more for your brand? Don't take another second to debate. Book your wedding photographer or videographer, create a promo for your business, or get your special occasion film in the most beautiful way possible. Visit www.pyromediaproductions.com or call 323-405-3820 to schedule a free consultation and let us take your project to the next level.
Now, Richard, you done said a whole mouthful. You dropped like 3 different things that could be completely different topics all by themselves. So one, you talked about the hair care products. 2, you talked about just the shame with Black women and just basically generational curses. And then you also talked about just us being scared to talk to our doctors or demand another test, or being apprehensive to ask a professional to dig deeper. Pick a topic, friend. At this point, you go into.
I want you to pick the relaxer, only because I feel like just recently we saw those little girls on the relaxer boxes that came out and said they didn't even have a relaxer. I feel like we need to be swinging our coins. But I want you to start with the relaxer, if you don't mind.
Yeah, some studies have shown, because back in the day, that was all we did, starting with lye and then all the other products in it. But that causes all these extra hormones to be absorbed into the skin and into the body. And some studies have seen in Black communities that these products are causing fibroids.
Wow.
We don't really know the mechanism of it, but That's a big thing. And now let's talk about systemic racism, right? Obesity, and I'll relate this to PCOS, food deserts, right?
Mm.
Redlining,
Oh, yeah.
lack of access to good nutritional options in poor Black communities. What does that lead to? People, get hooked on fast food or unhealthy food. They get obesity, and then they get these problems, particularly with PCOS and fibroids. Now, PCOS, basically that's a problem where you're not ovulating. And this is typically caused in a lot of women that we see with weight gain and this obesity problem in our community. And we know extra fat will cause insulin resistance. And what that can do is increase, insulin works everywhere in the body. So particularly with the female reproductive system, that will cause you to produce less estrogen and more testosterone. So this is why women will typically have symptoms of abnormal hair growth, deeper voices, and then it affects how you ovulate. So if you have more male hormone in your body than you do estrogen, your female hormone, you won't ovulate. So when you don't ovulate, you don't shed. So this is why some women will have symptoms where they go for months without a cycle, and then all of a sudden they're bleeding heavy.
Wow.
Looking like World War II just came up into their vaginas. And your uterine lining is just overgrowing and overgrowing, not being shed every month. So most women, is particularly a disease that's related to obesity and the metabolic syndrome. And so that's what we see. So oftentimes heavy bleeding or menorrhagia can get misdiagnosed or just dismissed because, doctors don't know. Particularly, you got to be sensitive to what community you're serving. That, hey, this could be fibroids or this could be PCOS. And again, that's a shame and just dismissing the symptoms of Black women and women of color. So that's why I always say you should go to a doctor that looks like you, understands you at the very least. Then people think, well, what are the treatment options? There was always a hysterectomy. Well, everybody doesn't want to go to the knife. And there are a lot of treatment options for you, ranging from, well, let's try certain types of birth control and see if that works, to as far as a hysterectomy, if needed. Like I said, I've removed fibroids as big as basketballs.
Oh my gosh.
I know that had to be life changing for your patients to have something, you carrying around something that's as big as a basketball in your stomach and now it's removed. Like that is like a whole nother life you have after that.
Yeah, looking like she's pregnant.
Wow.
That's what she looked like. And she didn't understand why her stomach was growing so big. And they working her up for colon cancer and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, a simple exam would have caught this a long time ago.
Wow. And I see, Andonnia, you shaking your head vehemently.
Well, yeah, because one of the things, a lot of people talk about the heavy bleeding. My bleeding was abnormal. I didn't know that until I saw a doctor talk about what a normal period looks like versus heavy bleeding. I didn't always have World War II moments. I had that for particular months, but I had both symptoms. So I had issues with constipation and urination, frequent urination, because the bigger your uterus gets, the more it pushes against your rectum and your bladder. So
yes,
that was another issue that I dealt with, and that's another reason why I opted for the myomectomy. And it's funny because I'm sitting here looking at the picture of what they took out of me, and I had to check and make sure my name was on it because I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I ended up having 5 and not 3. And they could only take out 4.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what comes out of my stomach as well because, I'm a pretty tiny person, but I'm gonna always have that fibroid fupa, and so I look forward to seeing because I know there's a lot in there for my small, my uterus. I can't remember what percentage it is bigger, but it's way bigger than it should be, and so I look forward to what just physically what it looked like, but also I know just doing more research now how much fibroids contributes, that not only am I anemic and always fatigued, like you mentioned, I think about the times where I'm beating myself up for being lazy, but just knowing now that it contributes so much to depression and things like that, where you're thinking like, I'm sitting here like, so like with my most recent job, I got to the point where I'm like, no, I need to stay at home. So I'm like, I can't get out of the bed. And the days when I'm not in pain, that can't get out of bed, I'm like, you start beating yourself up thinking something's wrong. But now doing more research, I understand like how much it contributes to depression and contributes to like, again, just that fatigue. And so I cannot wait to like not be severely anemic, and just, I just look forward, because again, this is my whole life. I've been feeling some sort of, again, extreme pain since my teens, but definitely in the past decade. So I just look forward to just how that's going to even emotionally feel, not being in chronic pain monthly.
Yeah, that's the thing people don't talk about. I see them in the office, but you don't realize how much this heavy bleeding affects people's lives, affects your sex life. You can't go out and work because you got to stop and change your pad every 2 hours.
Right.
Yes, Kristin knows being out with me how that goes, literally. And even with my job, and I got so frustrated because I had to get a doctor's note, and even it took them months after getting a doctor's note for these old white men to say like, oh, it's okay for you to work from home. And it's like, you have most of my women friends don't understand the pain I'm in, let alone trying to convince a man what it's like. And again, not being especially being a Black woman, trying to convince a white man in corporate America that what I'm saying is serious. So I always encourage people to advocate for themselves, but again, it still sometimes doesn't even matter. They just don't get it nor care.
Yes, and that advocate for yourselves. We're in the day of electronic medical records where patients can look at your records, look at what they're writing, and ask questions. But always advocate for yourself, and do not be afraid.
But it's so hard though sometimes. It's like we've been taught like, oh, the doctor's always right. The doctor knows this, and no shade, but I've run into doctors who really seem like they're just trying to push paper and get me up in there and up out of there. I switched gynos maybe like 3 or 4 times before I finally found somebody that was like, oh, I'm going to send you to get an ultrasound. I think you may have fibroids. I had never heard that word, not one time, after from maybe 19 to 30, just being freaking miserable 8, 10, 11, 12 days out of the month. People not even knowing like why I'm over here just like looking crazy, because it's been so many days. Like I didn't realize people that wasn't normal. So just to have a doctor pay attention or actually take the time to be like, well, you're a Black woman, Black women tend to have XYZ. Like that was life changing for me. And even just going through the surgery, once I got past the initial healing and all of that, like you instantly feel better. Like I instantly felt like, damn, is this what it feels like to not be anemic? Or this what vitamin D is supposed to feel like up in my system. Like, oh, okay, I'm retaining my vitamin Ds and whatnot.
That's how you feel too, Andonnia, since you just had your surgery?
So
you feel it.
I still have swelling, right? So I can still feel my sutures. But I actually had a period a week after surgery. It was lighter, and a lot of people say, well, give your body a couple of months. This period was definitely lighter, because there were days I was like, is something still going on?
Yes.
There's this woman, I follow this account called We Can Wear White. It's the White Dress Project's Instagram page, and there was a doctor they reposted, and I done shared this all over the place, but she showed what a normal pad should look like. And then she showed how much blood you're supposed to lose in your whole period. I said, oh, that's day 2 for me.
Oh, let me look at that and see.
Yeah.
No, so that's a good site to follow on
started
Instagram.
Talking about that, I was like, wait, that's the whole period? That's not one day? Girl. And so this time it was much lighter, and I was like, oh, I hope this is the norm. Y'all were talking about systematic racism, and I have a master's degree in sociology, so I just wanted to mention this. We've been suffering with being experimented on. This is why Black people have a distrust in the medical system. That's why I'm glad we have doctors that look like us.
Right.
Because we could not say no to medical experiments. This supersedes the Tuskegee Airmen. We were in slave quarters with no anesthesia and rusty tools. It's documented all over the place. Not to mention what happened with Henrietta Lacks, and a lot of people don't even know about what happened with her. But I'm glad that we have a medical professional on here and that it's a Black man, because
Yes.
few and far between do you find where you can actually have that conversation. I started talking to my new friend, and he had never heard of myomectomies and fibroids, and so he been on a research tip, and he was like, well, can you conceive after that? I was like, yeah. I said, but they do come back. As
Yeah.
one doctor said, once you had a propensity to grow fibroids, you always had a propensity to grow fibroids. And so it's just like you're on this timeline that you don't even know when the joint's gonna come back, if they gonna be, as symptomatic as the first time. So, prayer and my acupuncturist, because she was the only one that talked to me about making sure my liver is healthy so that it can help to filter out the excess hormones in my system, because a whole lot of our reproductive issues come from hormone over abundance of hormones in our system.
And that makes me think of going back to what you were saying, overgrowth of hormones. Don't get me started on not only, I mean, it's great to also have doctors that look like us, but also when going back to saying like what Fallon said about, oh, you think the doctor knows best. I 100% know in most fields they don't. And that goes to me, again, call it, some people either believe in it or don't, but it has to me a lot to do with diet as well. Like we, in terms of like hormones, we are the only people we know that, still drink cow's milk and things like that. I was definitely the teen and kid, and even now I love dairy. Like it's my thing. However, I do feel like it contributes as well. And sometimes because, again, these doctors are educated underneath the, American doctor system, who is controlled by, FDA, who is, all that. There are doctors who literally know no better and don't know any better because they are taught by a system that is, set to have us like this. So anyways, just wanted to touch on that as well, because it's like so many things contribute to why we are in this position. And it's just insane.
Andonnia, you said something about like mentioning it to like a friend or whatever. Like I had to take the time to like explain to my fiance, like, hey, I had this surgery, like this, and this. And of course, men are gonna ask the question, like, well, damn, can you still have a baby? Like, how does this affect all these things? And that's why it's important to have men and to have, especially like me, the first time and this is crazy, the first time I met somebody who was a Black man who said that they were a gynecologist, it was an Omega at the club, and I thought he was joking. Come to find out, he was being serious. That was not his line name, or that was not no pickup line or whatever, because people tend to say crazy stuff like that. But typically, that's far and few in between. I don't know too many men other than Richard who I know maybe like a couple of doctors from India who are men who are OBGYNs, but that's it. I don't know too many Black men. So just to see a Black man doing it and not having no shame to talk about it and like freely giving this information, like y'all need to be a part of the conversation too. Like it's important because we up in this deep. And I want to ask you, Richard, like, how do most of your patients feel when they meet you? And how do you make them comfortable talking to you, a man, about those type of things? And also, how would you suggest that we approach talking to our doctors about it?
Oh, sure. Well, our specialty is still white male dominated. And so oftentimes, again, the complaints of Black women get dismissed. White medical students still today think that Black people have thick skin, literally different skin, and that our pain is different. That's still some crap being taught today. But particularly with my community, majority of my patients are Black and Hispanic from Southeast DC or kind of the bordering towns. These some hood ratchet girls. Keep it real. But you kind of have to meet them on the level and talk to you, particularly being a queer physician. Well, they say, oh, okay, he's one of the kids. So I can feel comfortable talking to him and really being open, because he's not going to judge me. And, talk to them like their sister, talk to them in their language, break it down. But, oftentimes you can get your diagnosis just from listening or even doing a simple physical exam which is why, I don't understand to just say why things like fibroids get missed. We measure fibroids on ultrasound, but when you're doing a simple exam, we measure it based on how many weeks pregnant a uterus would be. So uterus is large. It's as big as a 20-week pregnancy. Well, that's a problem because that's not normal. But I think the majority of it is listening and having compassion and letting them know, okay, I'm aware of what you're saying and you're not being judged and you will get a full workup. You can't just dismiss everybody's pain. People also express pain and symptomatology different than some other cultures. Hispanic women tend to be pretty stoic and really don't say much. So you got to kind of get more out of them. And you'd be surprised, a lot of the Black women in my practice are very in tune with their bodies. Any type of smell that's unusual, any type of discharge or abnormal bleeding, they will come to the doctor, particularly if they feel comfortable with you. So I think it's just kind of the cultural competency of being Black, also being queer helps. That makes them more comfortable and just being able to relate. But I wanted to mention just all of the treatment options because there's a lot out there that people aren't really familiar with. You can try birth control depending on how big they are. Again, hysterectomy is the furthest extreme, but it doesn't always have to be done when your belly's cut open. That can be done minimally invasive.
So they don't have to cut you.
There's hysteroscopic procedures where they go through the vagina to extract. There's also UFE, which, and I'm glad the doctor's here. I have a question about that because I've read some conflicting information. Does UFE, because it's blocking arteries, does that harm the uterus? Because I know some people who've had it. I know there are different types, Sonata, Acessa, and they deal with blocking the blood flow to the fibroids. There's a procedure where they go inside of your vagina and they shave off the fibroid if it is sticking into the uterus. There are a lot of options out there now, but for me, I had a myomectomy, not a hysterectomy, so my womb is still viable for now.
Hysterectomy is a option, but that can be done minimally invasive. And then you have treatments in between treatments. So I know if you all watch Housewives of Atlanta, Cynthia got the fibro embolization procedure done.
Oh, yes, she did.
And that's actually very successful. So basically, they put a tourniquet and block off all those blood vessels that are feeding those fibroids, and they eventually shrink and die. There's also a procedure out now where you can have a ultrasound-guided laser ablation of your fibroids. So everybody doesn't have to resort to surgery. Eventually, when you go into menopause and your cycle stops, typically that's when the fibroids will shrink and go away, but that's not always guaranteed. So I implore everyone to really go over all the options and don't let your doctor push you in one direction or the other.
And I think Andonnia had a question. I don't know if your DC internet was working or not, but you might want to get him before the Southeast internet drops.
The blackout.
That is interesting. So I had a myomectomy, but I know some people who opted for UFEs, and I know there's Acessa and Sonata. But when you get that and it's blocking the blood vessels that are feeding the fibroids, does it cause harm to the uterus? Because I've read that if you are attempting to get pregnant, that's probably not the procedure for you.
Yes, that is correct. Because we don't encourage pregnancy after that. So that's an option you should be done with your childbearing. Now, women have gotten pregnant, but typically those pregnancies can be difficult because there's no blood flow to the uterus, hence no blood flow to the placenta. So you'll be at risk of miscarriage or other huge pregnancy complications. And now myomectomies don't always work because fibroids can grow back. They can come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, now you have my mind on something else because this old rugged womb is about to be married and you talking about like menopause and all these different things, but like what can a black lady like myself who knocking on 41 back door, what are some things that I could be doing to kind of like preserve all this goodness up in here, and like help me prepare for trying to birth and bring forth life as a older auntie that
I'm trying to get womb optimization.
yes
Your
womb.
womb is in
How,
the
how
best
can I
shape ever.
how can we optimize the womb?
Well, fertility declines after age 35,
Oh
and then it
Lord.
declines even more rapidly after age 40. That doesn't mean you can't get pregnant.
I got
Um,
this cat got tested. They said it's 35, so we good on that.
all right, so get the fucking honey. Um, but a lot of women also don't know fibroids in pregnancy can complicate things, and getting myomectomies the majority of the time you won't be able to give birth naturally. You're gonna have to get a C-section.
Really?
Yes.
They just told me that the other day, even though
I didn't know that.
They just told me that the other day. Even though they're of course VBACs, but still.
Yes,
They didn't tell, and if they told me that, I didn't hear. I did not know that.
My doctor
Yes, so
told
we
me
don't recommend that if you have myomectomy, particularly if they have to cut your uterus open, because again it's scarred and it's weak, and so
Let me
oftentimes
write that down.
your
I will
uterus can
ask
rupture open while you're
Oh,
pregnant,
oh
Yep.
my God.
Lord.
and that can be deadly. So most women who have to undergo myomectomies, we recommend C-sections. They aren't aware of that, and even having fibroids while you're pregnant, that can cause lots and lots of issues too. Increased pain, right? Risk of bleeding, risk of premature birth, and depending on where the fibroids are, the baby can have growth problems because that fibroid is blocking the space. And I've had to have quite a few patients who've had huge fibroids are able to get pregnant. Then when it comes time to give birth, where your risk of bleeding is increased, you hemorrhage, and you have the uterus has to be taken out.
Oh my
So
God.
fibroids can complicate pregnancy themselves,
my
but a lot of
Lord.
women aren't aware. Myomectomy means C-section for the rest of your life.
Oh my God. Y'all
I know
shocked
some
my-
people who've had successful VBACs after that, but one of the things my OB-GYN talked about was the location of the cuts.
Yes.
And if the cut is anywhere near the birth canal, she was like, yeah, that's a C-section. But ironically, I got the pictures of the fibroids, but we didn't even talk about the location of where my uterus was cut.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, typically having to cut the uterus from above, right? It's scarred, it's opened up, and you got to sew it back together. Those areas are weak. Now, sometimes fibroids inside the uterine canal that can be removed hysteroscopically, which is done through the vagina. Those often can you can often have successful pregnancies and give birth vaginally. But fibroids run the gamut of complications that a lot of women are aware of, and that's why you have to really advocate for yourself.
So it seems like Fallon, you learned something new on here. So I'm sure our listeners, they may be shocked to hear that as well, because I didn't know that either.
Baby, well, I guess you better than me if you signing up and ain't reading the fine print. Y'all shocked my jaws on that one, and now I'm gonna have to bring it up when I go to the doctor. Richard, bring your tools when you come to Houston for this wedding, because I might need you to inspect some stuff before I dip off for the honeymoon.
And fibroids can cause fertility issues, right? Some of them blocking the entire birth canal. A baby embryo can't implant and grow, and women will either have miscarriages or just can't get pregnant. So.
Oh yeah, my doctor definitely told me for sure that if I were to get pregnant, I probably wouldn't be able to carry the baby, which was the first time I had heard it. I mean, I have a 17-year-old, so granted, they are doing an open myomectomy, but preserving my fertility. But on the flip side of that, she's like, if you want to have a baby, the likelihood, there will likely be complications.
Mm-hmm. And these are things that aren't discussed because of, just the shame of it all and the mystery of the female reproductive system. And even hysterectomy, that word hyst is Latin for hysteria.
Really?
Right? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Latin for hysteria. I mean, it comes from a misogynist term, meaning women when they're on their periods were thought to be delirious. So anything with the reproductive tract, his, that's that Latin phrase. So, this has been since the beginning of time, where the reproductive health of women is a obscure thing to men, and particularly they don't care, and you just get really, really discriminated against for being your natural self.
Damn.
Another thing about hysterectomy is people don't talk about what my mom experienced. That hormone decline, that's what causes you to be crazy. And so a lot of times women have to replace the hormones, or they have to seek alternative treatment to get the balance, because my mother got angry. You hear me? Like, ain't nobody do nothing, and she so they're even, being younger and getting a hysterectomy, you still got to deal with all the repercussions of that. And the body had to change before it was scheduled to change, so to speak.
I think my cousin had a partial hysterectomy before the age of 30.
Before the age of 30?
Yeah, she had already given birth to 3 kids vaginally, but I can't remember the story because, I don't really be in too many people's, personal business. I always say personal business. I got that from my line sister. But it was a story after she had that surgery, something came back and they realized that she did not have to have that particular surgery. And her husband was just like, man, you let them take some of your... He was like, you didn't even have to. So, when you guys sit here and we speak about advocating for your own body and things of that nature, and you think about history in the past and, what they've done to people that look like us, like, you really, really got to have a good relationship with your primary care physician or your OBGYN or whatever, and just make sure that, you're asking all the questions. Like, you remember being in school and they're like, there is no dumb question. And there really isn't a dumb question when it comes to your health, because you need to know. And if you can't get an answer from your doctor, you probably need to go to another one to get an answer.
Period. I always warn patients that surgery sounds great. It sounds ideal, but there can be complications with surgery. Even just going to sleep under anesthesia, you may not wake up.
Oh Lord!
Or
you're my friend.
We don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that.
We're gonna take us a short break. We're gonna
come right on back.
We're gonna bring it back and we're gonna wrap it up positive, because we gonna keep it real, but we don't want to.
We need a part 2. We need a part 2. There's so much more to talk about.
It really is, but we'll take a quick break and then we'll get back into that, and we're gonna try to close it out on a positive note so that we can pray over Chinaka and send these good vibes her way. So breakity break, and we'll be right back, y'all.
Do you have a business, brand, or even a creative idea? Pyro Media Network can help you design a strategy to make your brand impactful. Visit www.pyromedianetwork.com today to schedule a free consultation. Pyro Media Network, next level media.
All right.
We keep it real. Yeah, we know Richard.
Right. Richard over here, Dr. Jones giving us everything. He's giving us everything that we need to know. So I can't say nothing bad about that, because he's giving us these risk factors, and there are definitely risk factors with surgeries. That's the real.
It is. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I just, Chinaka gonna be good. Everybody gonna be good. But
for sure, I'd rather people know about the risk factors than y'all worried about me being scared. No, for sure.
Well, yeah.
And that's what the doctors keep telling me. They keep using words like blood transfusion. And, all these things, and I'm like, Lord, don't tell me, but tell me.
Right.
Yes, right. That's a risk, and again, the uterus is a bloody organ. That's what it's meant for. So you can and removing fibroids is very bloody. So you can get blood loss, you can get scar tissue down the line. You can even have sexual dysfunction, right? Because you're removing all those muscles of the pelvis. So sometimes
I'm doing my exercises right now.
You giggling?
Yep.
You can see prolapse, vaginas falling out.
Oh my God,
that's real.
Risk of premature menopause.
Your cervix can fall out.
That is real. That is real. They can
your
knock
vagina can fall out.
Your cervix can fall out.
When they say they're gonna knock the bottom out, they talking about they knocking the bottom out. That's real.
But you know what, y'all? Okay, because if you listen to the podcast, y'all know I tell too much of my business. So I'm just going to tell a little bit more here because you might as well just know it, But I remember, like, back in the day, I was having intercourse and I would bleed while I was having intercourse. And so I ended up going to the doctor because I'm like, this has never happened before. And the doctor was like, I think that he's hitting your cervix. And I'm like, what? Like, what is this? And so, oh my gosh, what if that thing would have fell out?
He could have knocked
be pretty bad.
And you actually touched on something going back to, you asked something else you were saying about it hitting things when you were talking about, educating men. Something I thought about was educating, again, going back to educating young boys, like, again, for me, it was never a shameful thing, but it was one of those things like men, especially, early 2000s, like our generation, they, didn't really care. We didn't really speak up for ourselves. So I think a good thing with educating boys is to say, like, when your girl or your wife is telling you that it's hurting during sex, like she's not making an excuse for not wanting to have sex. When she's saying, ooh, not that position, it's not because she doesn't want you to have the best position, but sir, you are hitting her fibroids, you are hitting her, sir, things like that. So that was definitely something that I wanted to touch on because I feel like so many men, even my homeboys now, still don't get it. You hear about so many doctors who still believe that women pee and have their period out of the same place.
Oh God.
So,
oh my gosh, I saw that.
Yeah, there's so many things. Where it's like educating men just from a younger age or even now our age, just on different things where it's like, bruh, it's not that we don't want to have sex, it's that you're literally hurting me.
Right. And everything you hitting it ain't no wall. Sometimes it's a fibroid.
Hello, you are not putting it down. You are not putting it down.
Yeah, and I tell them your dick ain't that big.
It ain't
because sex shouldn't hurt. The vagina is made to push out an 8-9 pound baby. So your dick ain't really doing the trick. But if there is pain, then that's an issue. And aren't the kids taking health class in middle school or high school?
They ain't even reading.
Parents opt out of that class all the time. They don't want their kids sitting in the class in school. The kid go sit in the library or whatever they're going. And the parents don't do the due diligence at home. So the internet is teaching the children.
We just had a whole conversation on talking to your children about sex and how important.
The way we got dumbasses to school, not knowing what was going on. We know they're not talking about it. They not even, damn well they not talking about the real stuff, the medical reasons or.
Well, not only that, y'all, I've been in education for 14 years. And my first year teaching, we had 7th graders who were pregnant. We had kids who were having sex in the bathroom and under portable buildings. These kids this ain't the prayer land. Like, these kids out here doing stuff they don't even know what their body is, but they out here touching other people's parts.
And no, they don't. If I'm 40 and didn't know half this shit, because I just read somewhere, and yes, I got a law degree. Yes, sis is educated, but hey, I'm just keeping it real. People may not know these things because people always tell you, oh, you have sex, you get pregnant. They make the shit seem like anytime you doing it, you're going to get pregnant. And that is not true. I saw something that was like, oh, it's just this window where you can get pregnant. Like all these times when your parents is preaching all this, don't have sex stuff. They probably didn't even know that either. They're just really facilitating and like making it seem like anytime you smash, you can get pregnant. And that's not true. You can only get pregnant when you're ovulating, correct?
Well,
that is correct. But again, some people don't always ovulate at the same time. And so I tell my young patients, particularly, because a lot of these girls get pregnant the first time they do it. And I tell you, well, biologically, the purpose of sex is to reproduce. So wherever you are in your cycle, women don't all ovulate at the same time. You can get pregnant. So get on birth control or use condoms and educate those little boys too. Because they're very, very unaware. They just want to stick their dicks in something, not realizing that the physiology of the female reproductive system is way more complicated than it is for boys.
See, and I'm still learning.
Not only that, if you have semen can live inside of a woman's body for 5 days.
Yeah.
So people out here thinking, "Oh, I'm good." No, sis, you not.
Or they think they can pull out. We know that don't work either.
Epic fail.
I have a 17-year-old based on that. It was a lie. It was a lie. It was a lie.
Epic fail.
But I
Or even if the
so
boys thinking, oh, I done fucked a lot of girls, never got pregnant, I can't have kids.
Mm.
Wrong.
right, that is like a go-to. I can't have kids, and then somebody it'd be your turn next, and then you be the one with a miracle happen, and now you having his miracle baby. I'd be so upset.
I
It'd
would
be
be fighting.
first
I want
coming.
to switch
Second
gears
coming
a
of
little bit,
Jesus.
Richard. I wanted your opinion on this. So I think, like in recent years, we've been seeing where people have been speaking about um, changing from like some of the different tampons and maxi pads that we once wore, saying that they contain like chemicals and those things may be affecting our bodies. Do you have any knowledge or any insight on like some of the best things that women and younger girls should be using, like when it comes to like your periods? Like for me, I was telling the ladies I like.
I love these damn period panties.
I like period panties. I like period panties, and if I don't do period panties, I like honey pot. And some of these companies are claiming to be natural pads. But do you have any knowledge on that, or can you share something with us about that?
Yeah, but I think young girls and boys need to be educated. Because first of all, vaginas come in different sizes and depths. So you see all those things on the pad, the size L and R, and nobody even knows what that means. So you have to pick one that's unique to you. Also, what's the material in it? Because is it cotton, polyester? Some of that can irritate the vagina. But I've seen a lot of patients going to the menstrual cups. Actually,
I'm scared of those.
I did the cup before too. I did the cup, and I did the it's a soft one where you can actually have it and still have sex.
That's why your ass did that. Hot.
Well, my line sister told me about it, so I had to try it to make sure it worked. But
you be blaming this line sister for everything. I hope she listens.
Obviously, they don't be listening because they don't even know. Throwing them right under the bus.
I'm the person on the call rolling my eyes because I literally just think about yesterday. My friend's like, "Oh, try the panties again," and I'm like,
that's how you know they ain't never had fibroids.
That's exactly. I'm literally like, everybody was talking about these cups and all these other options. She's like, well, I know for me, I can last like 10 hours, so you should be able to do it. I said, you don't understand. Right. I said, you don't understand how much comes out of me at one time. Like, don't get it.
Yeah. That's how you know they have not had this strife and struggle like some of us.
Or when she's like, oh, she'll be like, girl, don't make me laugh. I feel
literally. I'm like, don't make me laugh. Listen, Kristin and I literally went out a couple months ago at Hank's, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm leaking through my pants. Like, and literally, don't make me laugh, sneeze,
don't sneeze,
anything.
So, Dr. Jones, can you talk about? Because one other thing I dealt with a lot was blood clots, and people don't talk about that part. And it didn't scare me until one fell out of me in the shower.
Wait, what?
That's like. Same.
Oh, that's regular for me. That's why I'm saying those cups and panties don't work because of how much comes out. Like, the blood, and that's my blood clots are the norm for me. Like norm, clogging up my drain.
How big is a blood clot?
Like the size of your hand.
Like
multiple coming out at a time.
Y'all are literally teaching me something on this podcast,
and that's how you know you ain't been living this
thug
life.
From month to month. Like 1 month it'll be only clots, and the next month it'll be only like just pouring, pouring blood.
And they just in the shower, it's just coming out.
Oh yeah, they come out. If I go pee, it comes out. Like it just fills the toilet.
You can walk
when you go to the restroom. That's it.
When you sit down and stand up too fast.
Yeah, Kristin. So when I say you don't make me laugh, it's because a blood clot is gonna come out and just go past my underwear. Like it's gonna go past.
Louise,
like this is real life.
And that's blood clots aren't normal. So let me tell you, the average cycle runs 5 to 7 days, and it should be 70 cc's of blood the entire time. So you can imagine 70 cc's. What is that?
No idea.
The first 2 hours.
70 milliliters of blood, maybe the size of less than a. Shit, I don't even know what I would say. Little glasses, like them little tiny wine glasses. Maybe it should fill half of that up.
Dang.
You have the little small orange juice glasses.
So that's day 2. That's day 2.
That should be the whole cycle, but depending on how long it is.
Wow.
That was day 2.
And let me tell y'all,
don't know that.
I was on my period October 9th. I did not stop bleeding until October 25th. And my period came on again yesterday.
Jesus.
Literally.
And blood clots are a
Literally.
sign that you're bleeding so much that that's old blood sitting up there, and what will it do? Coagulate, and it'll eventually fall out. So no, that's not normal.
That's
So
why
women
me
have to
having my
understand
period
which
today,
normal.
going into my daggone surgery, in 2 days. I'm like, Lord.
Oh my gosh.
I wish the people could see Kristin's face, and I'm sure that there are people, aunties, cousins, homies, whoever that are listening to this conversation, and either you gonna be on one side where you feel us, or you're gonna be over here with that surprise face. But that's why we gotta have these conversations, because
it's necessary.
people
I just
knowing.
saw a video where the little girl started her period in school, and I guess the mom couldn't go to her, so she called the father and was like, "Can you go get her pads with wings?" And so he's like, "Okay." He went and bought the pads or whatever. Then he got her a thing of wings.
Oh no,
that's hilarious.
Chicken wings. So he was like, "Well, she got them both now." I mean, I thought it was cute, but
I thought that was so cute. That's cute.
It was cute.
Yeah, or you know what, my brother's daughter, when she first had her period, because he didn't know shit about that, he took her to the ER. He had no idea what to do. Had no idea what to do. So you gotta educate these men, particularly our young dads, because he didn't know what the hell to do.
And our old dads, shoot, all of them. Because these are it's funny listening to it, but these are like real life situations that we either know somebody who may have wanted to do that or done it or whatever.
Right.
Like, really just don't be having these conversations. So I'm glad that we got to get here and be like very candid, because even conversations about periods, I don't remember outside of the Cosby Show. I don't know too many other people who had those big ceremonies or like moments where it was like welcome. Like, to me, it was like, oh, the curse, or oh, that time, or like it was always a bad connotation to it. Like, I never got anything that like welcomed me to it or like made me happy about it. It was always just kind of like meh. And it's been,
and you always dread it, and it's been that way. I mean, even now, I haven't experienced what you ladies have experienced, but I still dread it. It's like, oh my gosh, and then you got to plan stuff around it. It's like, I'm going to homecoming. I hope my period ain't out.
And I'll tell you, most young girls don't come to the gynecologist, at least either they're pregnant or when it's time for their pap smear. So majority of the time, you see your pediatrician when you're young, or you're seeing your family doctor, and really the education should start there. Elementary school, they need to learn about their bodies and not be ashamed.
Yeah, because I think kids are coming on a little bit earlier too, like
because that chicken got the hormones
early.
9 to 12. But so you're talking about hormones. One of my nieces started showing signs of pre-puberty at 7, and they actually had to give her something to stop that because it was too early. And she has a medical condition that would have thrown her into crisis mode. So,
and we know young Black girls typically come on earlier than any other race, so they could start that cycle as early as 8 or 9 years old. And imagine being 9 years old and you start having your cycle, all of a sudden you don't know what to do. And there's that shame talking about sex and reproductive health.
Yes.
So that room has to be dismissed, especially in our community. Black people tend to be more conservative, and a woman's body is, not to be discussed, particularly sex and sexuality. And kids get it; they're smart nowadays. If not, they're gonna look it up on the internet or TikTok. So it's better to hear it from their parents or their pediatrician before
the streets.
It's too late. Yep, before they get on TikTok and Instagram.
And honestly, I feel like this conversation could go on for hours and hours. So I really feel like we need to do a part 2, Kristin.
Yeah, I'd be down. I mean, I feel like we have to do a part 2 because you better than me if you're not having this conversation with your friends, with your children. I mean, I feel like this is a family conversation that we all should be having. I mean, especially when we start thinking about family history that we may or may not know, and somebody just have been too ashamed to say what they went through, and now that you're going through it comes out, and this information could have benefited you years ago had someone said something. So we definitely need to start having these conversations early on. I mean, even when we think about teenage parents, if the father is or is not in the life, like we still need to know the history of that side of the
Yeah.
family as well, because you just never know.
It's just so many things that we need to know and talk about. And best believe I'll be educating my baby about this in case we end up with a little girl, so he don't be buying no chicken wings and no other foolishness for my little girl at either. But I do want to end the conversation on a positive note, and like speak some life into our guest, Miss Chinaka, since she is going through this procedure. And if anybody have any closing words that they want to share with the people, we're excited and definitely want to thank y'all, because this is the first time we've actually had other people on here, and y'all have been like amazing. Y'all have been transparent. Y'all have been raw. Y'all been real. I feel like I done learned stuff. Kristin over there wide eyed, like, oh my God, what's going on? So,
Well, can I put one little plug in? And this
yeah.
is in regards to your reproductive health as well. The cervical cancer vaccine. If you have not gotten it, or your kids haven't gotten it, it's from age 9 to 46. Please give it to them. They're giving it to young girls and boys, the HPV vaccine, because boys are the vector. But I encourage all young kids to get that vaccine, and for us older people who may not have gotten it, it will protect your cervix against the HPV virus and getting issues with cervical cancer. So please go get vaccinated if you have not, and the young kids should get vaccinated. But that's another taboo topic. They thinking, oh, we give her the cervical cancer vaccine, or we give him the HPV vaccine, the kid's gonna go start fucking. And that's just not the case. It's just protecting them from, also protects against warts, anal cancer, any type of cancer that's due to the HPV virus. So that's
I was definitely a parent. I was definitely a parent who held out with my daughter, who, like I said, who's now 17. We definitely got it for her, but we held out not because we thought she was gonna start hunching, but just just like, what else we gonna stick her with? But no, she definitely has it too. So I agree.
That's good.
Did you guys? Did you guys have any "you better than me" moments that you want to share with the people?
You better than me if you quiet and suffering. You don't have to. Open your mouth and talk to somebody. Get in your health history. Talk to these people. Call these aunties out. Y'all want to be nosy about my business? Let me be nosy about yours.
Period.
So we put these health histories together.
That was a mic drop. You're definitely better than me if you're suffering in silence. I think just for me, you better than me if you just complacent or still kind of ashamed. I know I'm working on my own shame too, but especially with your partner, the person you laying down with, like if you can't talk about your body or like, oh baby, I'm having cramps, or baby, I'm not feeling good, then you should not be comfortable laying with that person. So you better than me if you laying up with somebody who ain't gonna take a moment to respect your body or your mind or even ask questions. So have them conversations with your man too. And if you don't, you better than me.
And let me. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, you better than me if you don't know the power of your pussy. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey, that's a whole nother topic. But hey.
That's a whole nother topic. But that applies to reproductive health.
Y'all making sure y'all coming back on the show.
Yeah, okay. Richard need his own segment.
The power, the PUSSY. Okay. You better than me if you think I won't be naked on these beaches after my fibroid flu is gone.
Hey. And you gonna have
I already always be naked, but just more, more.
Well, you're gonna have the energy too to run on the beach now. So
right.
And every time I walk, you can even wear a cup.
Yeah, exactly. I look forward to trying all these newfangled methods.
Yeah.
You better than me if you trying these period panties, because I'm still scared of it. But anyways, I don't want to get scared by nobody. Send me a pair. I feel like I'm gonna send them right back to you, or the money gonna mail them right back to you. But hey, you better than me if you're not experimenting and trying new things and figuring out what works for your body. But y'all, I'm just glad that we were able to have this conversation. And Chinaka, we are definitely sending love and light and praying for you. We looking forward to seeing you half clothed with your no fupa no more, and like just seeing a revisit of this conversation where you can like actually tell us how you feeling so much better and like give us all the good updates. So definitely sending all those good vibes to you. And
Thank
y'all,
you.
Yes, and
y'all-
Chinaka, call me if you need anything or have any questions.
I will. I receive it all, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on as well.
Yeah,
I'm glad to come back anytime.
Yes.
for sure.
Because I can go on and on.
Yeah, we're gonna hold you to it.
Thank you.
Kristin, fix your face because I feel like this is like information overload for you. So
No, it's definitely not information overload. I mean, I learned some new things and some things I was aware of, but it's just been very nice to share and to hold space with everyone on the call. Again, first time, it definitely won't be our last time doing this. So thank you guys for being like just the first people to have this experience with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And y'all all just enjoy. Remember the power of the P and advocate for yourself and do all these things. And we will talk to y'all next time.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Peace.
You Better Than Me is a podcast on Pyro Media Network, produced by Pyro Media Productions. Pyro Media Network and Pyro Media Productions are subsidiaries of Pyro Media Enterprises. For more information, please visit www.pyromedianetwork.com. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next.